Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 in our chats with Emily as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are using the Johnson edition. We are now in poem 276. Many a phrase has the English language. Notice that strange word order. The English language has many a phrase. The emphasis, of course, here is going to be on the idea of the English language and the phrase that will have anything to do with what this poem is about. We will read the entire poem and never know what the actual phrase is, although we'll obviously guess at it. In some ways, we are back to poem 252. Let's just remind ourselves of that one real quickly when she says it this way. I can wade grief, whole pools of it. I'm used to that, but the least push of joy, emphasize that push of joy, by the way, breaks up my feet and I tip drunken, let no pebble smile. 'Twas the new liquor, that was all. Power's only pain, stranded through discipline, till weights will hang. Give balm to giants and they'll wilt like men. Give Himalaya, they'll carry him. Now, we've of course danced with that text, and we're going to come back to the question of Emily's love poetry. Now, we've in some ways been kind of moving around this topic without really coming directly to it, because a poem like this we had to know was coming. And so our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at LearnStrong.net, down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily, our playlist. I'm hopeful that you've already worked through our set of introductory comments. I'm hopeful that you've as well been able to read at least the previous 275 poems. We just finished with 275, Doubt Me, My Dim Companion. And guess what? We're back again to that protestations of affection or love. And in that regards, Emily is always going to be interested, it seems, in language. She's one of the great poets of language, and especially the language of love. Now, the great scholar Wolfe has pointed this out. For Emily, the way it's said is, Emily is, quote, more interested in love as a way of being, not speaking. And then at another point, Wolfe says it this way, which I find fascinating. Although her love poetry could be humorous and playful, it's seldom a jubilant celebration of love's fulfillment or love's inexhaustible variety. Instead, it takes other forms. It's anticipatory. It is hypothetical. It speaks with anguished recollection. It tells a tale of what might have been. Sometimes it sings the saddest of all songs, a lament for love's impossibility. There's a reason why we're always referencing Emily scholars, and I think that line is brilliant, especially as we come to this set of lines. Hear the joy, hear the suffering in this poem as we read it. Many a phrase has the English language. I've heard but one. Low as the laughter of the cricket, loud as the thunder's tongue, murmuring like old Caspian choirs when the tides a-lull, saying itself in new inflection like a whippoorwill, breaking in bright orthography on my simple sleep, thundering its perspective till I stir and weep. Not for the sorrow done me, but the push of joy. Say it again, Saxon. Hush, only to me. Now, the way this poem ends, as opposed to its juxtaposition, is remarkable. Notice she'll begin by, the English language has many phrases. Of course, later it will be Saxon. The English language has many phrases. She says, I've heard but one. Now, what is this phrase? Well, many have speculated it is the phrase, I love you. Of course, it could be any number of other phrases, but it seems that's what this poem is built around. Notice then she'll say, here are all the L's, low, this phrase, low as the laughter of the cricket, loud as the thunder's tongue. Here in a bit it's going to be the thundering perspective, right? Murmuring. So notice all these different ways that this phrase can be represented. Interesting, in the end, she'll just simply say, whatever that phrase is, say it. She doesn't say whisper it or whatever, she doesn't say it. Murmuring like old, and again, all these interesting uses of simile here. Like old Caspian choirs, Caspian taking us back to poem 212. When the tides a-lull, saying itself in new inflection, like a whippoorwill. Of course, this way of making the reference to inflection, and then we're going to go to orthography, and then we're going to come back to this notion of the language again with Saxon. Emily's playing with language. Now, I think that one of the major points of this poem is that true love is translinguistic. Can we say it that way? And I think it's fair. And again, we call this series Chats with Emily because I would love to ask Emily if she agrees with this phrase that we have in 303, the new is the new. That is to say, the N-E-W is the K-N-E-W. And in this poem, the new is the new inflection, and yet she'll say, I want you to say it to me again, so the second time it's said or more. It's no longer N-E-W, it's K-N-E-W. She's playing with language when she says, breaking in bright orthography. Now, I think standing behind this poem is the plays of Shakespeare. I think standing behind a lot of the poems of Emily are the plays of Shakespeare. We know that she loved Shakespeare. We know that she enjoyed reading Shakespeare out loud even with her pals. And I think that here, this idea of orthography takes us back to the great play of love, Much Ado About Nothing. You'll remember in Act 2, Scene 3, line 20 and following, that Benedict is making his observation about Claudio. Do you remember this? And he says, now he has turned orthography. In other words, all he wants to do is talk about love, write love poems and the like. There was a time when he loved the fife and the drum. You'll remember all of this. We've given a full lecture on this play at learnstrong.net. She says, breaking in bright orthography on my simple sleep. And I think that guys, every word for Emily seems to be deliberately chosen. No, it's this simple sleep. In other words, now all of a sudden I can't sleep anymore because I heard this phrase. Thundering. Its perspective is key, right? In other words, the potentiality of it. Till I stir and weep, which is, of course, going to rhyme with sleep. And weeping takes us back to poem 189. You'll remember that when we played poem 189, it's such a little thing to weep, so short a thing to sigh, and yet by trades the sighs of these we men and women die. A beautiful companion read here. Not, she says, I'm weeping, but not for the sorrow done me, but the push of joy. And again, this idea of the push of joy will take us to poem 172, 'Tis So Much Joy, and of course to poem 252 that we started with, right? The push of joy. And then she'll say it again. Say it again, she'll say. Now this phrase, say it again, is one that repeat, just please, would you just say it again? Would you just please repeat? And then she'll use the word Saxon. Now, when we get to poem 323, there's a second version of this poem that's actually not in the Johnson edition, and it runs like this. The hand you stretch me in the dark, I put mine in and turn away. I have no Saxon now. Again, obviously, we're talking about the language of the English language. Say it again, Saxon. And then her use of the word hush. Say it again is only used as a phrase once in all of her poetry, and it's right here. Hush. And then this takes us back to poem 142. Hush, only to me. When we get to poem 1737, none suspect me of the crown. This idea of the privacy of some of these lines. And I like to juxtapose this with our study of Walt Whitman. You'll remember our talks with Walt as opposed to chats with Emily. Our talks with Walt, where we studied every poem of the deathbed edition, the 1892 edition of Whitman's Leaves of Grass, where there's this intimacy that's happening there. We think of Song of Myself, Passage 5, comes to mind immediately, where there's this intimacy. You'll remember Crossing Brooklyn Ferry. He plays a very similar kind of game where he says, hey, what's it like to hold me? Only there, Walt is intentionally speaking to you, the reader, to us. Here, notice Emily is almost like, this poem was never to be maybe read by anyone other than the one she was sharing it with, whoever that is. I mean, again, many have argued this is possibly another Saint-Beuve poem. It's not, or a Sioux poem. It's not clear. At 2a, what are we going to do with a poem like this in terms of messages? I think that what she's saying is the language of intimacy is both amazing and at times agonizing. It can be both. At 2b, I love all the literary or rhetorical language. A poem about language. It's obviously language about language. The new is the new, if you will. At 3A, well, I mentioned obviously Shakespeare's Much Ado About Nothing, although we could have said any number. I mean, Midsummer Night's Dream comes to mind. The way in which love and language is intertwined. I mean, Shakespeare is obviously the very best at it. Emily, however, it seems to me, comes a remarkable close in that she can always be playing the game. But I think there was, and I've said this to you guys a number of times, I think there was tremendous influence on the way that Emily plays the game on great poets to come. And obviously T.S. Eliot comes to mind. Do you remember in Prufrock, Let Us Go Then You and I, when the evening is spread out against the sky like a patient ether eyes upon a table? In the room the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. We've given full lectures on this at learnstrong.net. Prufrock, the poem, is a poem about language. Remember it? What's he say? It is impossible to say just what I mean. If one settling the pillow says, that's not what I meant at all, that's not it at all. That notion that there's something about love, that language just can't work till human voices wake us and we drown. I would challenge you to go back and study the poetry of T.S. Eliot. We've given lectures on almost all of his important poems there at learnstrong.net. And qualify a poem like this. I think Eliot was very influenced by Emily and her project. I do. Finally, at 3B, what was a time when you longed for someone? How can you own a poem like this? What was a time you longed for someone to say something to you, a phrase, right, of the English language or any language, and yet only for you? Just like maybe our study of Emily is just only for you. Thank you.